Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. Well, we are here for another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I am privileged to sit here with gubernatorial candidate Greg Lopez. We're in Castle Rock, Colorado. Greg's been a good friend over the course of the last several years. We've become pretty decent confidants in each other on a variety of different levels. I've tried to bring him up to speed on some of the wildlife-related issues, and he's tried to bring me up to speed on maybe how to be a little bit more civil with a level of decorum. So we're going to have a good conversation, and, 2026 is a big deal here in the state of Colorado, and it's something where not only just sportsmen and women, but the entire general public should pay attention to the election process, the legislative process, and while we don't like to deal in politics often, we have to in the state of Colorado. So, Greg, appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate you coming in and taking the time, and look forward to the conversation because you've been immersing yourself into things wildlife the last several years that you were unfamiliar with. But
that's true.
You kind of been brought up to speed.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Pleasure to be with you, Dan. And I've learned so much over the course of our relationship about things that I was not really aware of the impacts, that was happening. And so through your introduction to me with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, going to those meetings and listening, I've learned a lot, and you're right, I am running for governor. One of the things that recently, as you know, I was running as a Republican, but at the beginning of this year, I changed to an independent. And I changed as an independent because I'm realizing here in Colorado, both parties are broken. Both parties are not interested in doing what's in the best interest of the people. They play political ideology, and they're not really worried about the impacts. So, my governing philosophy is pretty simple. People over politics, do no harm, and do what works. And with my background and my experiences, I've been involved in a lot of different organizations throughout my life. I feel that I do bring that steady hand, that common voice that will bring people together to talk about what is in the best interest of Colorado in its totality. Not just for an election cycle, not for one special issue, but what can we do to actually help the people here in Colorado?
You've done a plethora of things in your background, and your most notable deal recently is represented the 4th Congressional District as a congressman.
That's right.
And so we're going to get into the weeds on some of this stuff, and we're going to circle back on the wildlife end of it.
Sure.
But give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you came from, and why in the hell did you decide to turn around and get into politics as like a hobby or something?
I think those are great questions because, I look back in my life, right? And I have the same questions, like, how did you end up here? What was it, right? Look, I come from humble beginnings. My mom and dad grew up working in the fields. My dad had a 6th grade education, never learned to read and write. My mom has a 10th grade education. I don't come from money. I don't come from a pedigree family, and I don't come from a great education. I joined the military. I spent 4 years in the Air Force, was able to get my associate's degree while I was serving. And so that's where I met my lovely wife of now 38 years. We've been married 38 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I tell her there's a special place in heaven for her, for putting up with me for 38 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, we moved to Colorado as newlyweds. This was back in, the late 80s. And I fell in love with the state. It has so much to offer, right? The beauty, the outdoors, the entertainments, the sports. It has everything every major metropolitan city and state has except for the ocean. But we have the beach. We have a lot of beach.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot of beach. Yeah.
So the way I got involved in the politics was, it was a nasty rumor, to be honest with you. There was a rumor going around in Parker that I was going to run for mayor because I got drafted to be the homeowner president. And I would go to every council meeting, just to listen and report back. So I got elected mayor at the age of 27 in Parker. I was the youngest mayor elected in the state at the time, and I was a strong mayor. So I was the mayor and the city manager. So everybody reported directly to me. And so I learned everything there was to learn about uh, land use, air quality, water, transportation, crime, all those things that the state currently has to deal with. I learned at an early age and learned how to create communities, not how just to prove things, but how do you create a community? How do you create a sense of belonging? And I think that's where Colorado has lost this image. We don't even know what Colorado is about anymore, And so I think this is something that people are thirsting for, is to have someone that understands not only local government at its local level, but also I used to be the president of the Denver Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So talk about understanding small business. And then I became the director of the United States Small Business Administration here in Colorado. So for close to 6 years, I was the voice and face of small business. And my job was to make sure small businesses thrived and survived. They had access to capital. They understood what it meant to be a small business owner. And then, I left there, and then, of course, I just came back for the 118th Congress for the 4th Congressional District here in Colorado. And that is 21 counties, and it went all the way up to Nebraska, all the way over to Kansas, and all the way down to Oklahoma. So pretty much the entire eastern plains of Colorado's, who I represented.
Your tenure in D.C., educational experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Eye-opening experience?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you think that there's a gap between state politics and federal politics, or do you think that there's just a long road to be able to connect the two of them?
No, look, I think there's a misunderstanding of the relationship of state politics and national politics, or the issues themselves. Okay. Yeah, you know what? When I was in Congress, I got to see a lot of things, had a lot of good conversations. I mean, I was speaking with the Speaker of the House, with the minority leaders. And the good thing about me being there is a lot of people didn't know my party affiliation at the time. So I had a lot of people that were Democrats that were talking to me, right? We had good conversations. But I would tell you that, what, too many times local media focuses on national politics instead of state issues, right? They're focusing on what's going on with the shutdown of the national government. They're not focusing on the overruns of the state budget. They're not talking about the fact that every single year here in Colorado, in 5 months, our legislature passes over 600 bills every year. And these folks, they're not reading them. There's no way that they can read 600 bills and truly understand what's in them. There's too much going on right now in Colorado as it pertains to political ideology, party ideology, and they're not focusing on what's in the best interest of the people. And that's why I put people over politics. But as a governor, I will be able to reach across the aisle with the congressional delegation and also with my colleagues in the House and in the Senate at the national level. Well, they know me. I've been there, right? And I know what the challenges are that they're faced every single day through lobbyists and pressure points and those types of things. But I firmly believe that when there's a will, there's a way. And we can solve the problems that we're facing, especially here in Colorado. But we can't rely on the federal government to solve everything for us. We must rely on ourselves to make sure that we take care of each other. And that's what the 10th Amendment's all about in the Constitution. It's about states' rights.
Greg, do you think that politics confuses the general public enough to where there's so much dissension or there's so much distraction to it that a lot of people just throw their hands up and say, I'm not going to participate in this because I think it's a bunch of BS?
Yeah. As I travel the state, that's exactly what I'm hearing. I talk to the Black community. I talk to the Hispanic community. I talk to ranchers. I talk to farmers, small business owners, bankers, economic development people. They say, Greg, you know what? It doesn't matter what we want. It doesn't matter how we feel. It's the legislature and the elected officials will do whatever they want. They don't ask us if they should be spending the money in this way. They believe that they know better than we do. And we really need a governor that understands that we need to protect the quality of life and the way of life here in Colorado. I'm a listener. I listen to people. That, when you invited me to the first CPW meeting, right? I sat there. I just listened. I didn't ask any questions.
No, but I can see facial expressions. It's like, the hell did he get me into now? It's like, but to your point, ever since we've been communicating for the last several years, you've always been an astute student, so to speak. It's like I've supplied you with a tremendous amount of factual documentation, not mine,
Right.
but just to turn around and give you the opportunity to open this up. Look at the plethora of information that's here from a state agency, Department of Natural Resources, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and educate yourself. Because, and I think that's one of the things that's impressed me so much about you is if you're doing that on wildlife in an issue that you feel necessary to at least pay attention to, what are you doing on all the stuff that you really know about that 100% of the people care about?
Right.
And that's what's kind of enlightened me to be able to turn around and have these conversations.
Yeah, look, I'm a reader, because it's easy to have conversations with people, and they'll tell you their vantage point, they'll share what they do, but really it's trust and verify, right? Trust what you're hearing, but verify it, and to your perfect example, I read the 10J rule. I read the management plan for the reintroduction of the wolf, right? I read the Endangered Species Act. So reading to me is how you get knowledge. But getting back to your original question, I think people have lost hope. I think people have lost hope in their elected leaders. We're no longer public servants where we're serving the public. Too many of the elected leaders believe that the public works for them or that the public doesn't know what's in their own best interest. They decide how parents should raise their children. They decide what type of regulations small businesses need to adhere to, right? They decide which type of criminals are going to get arrested and which ones are not. It's just out of control. And I think it's time we bring back Colorado to the people and let the people's voices be heard once again. Because I have full faith in people that they can achieve their American dream and their own destiny. And too much government gets in the way.
Do you think that the way that the system is laid out, and I'll speak specifically to one aspect that I hear complaints about once people find out about it, it's almost a third of our elected officials in the state of Colorado General Assembly are done by vacancy committee. We didn't put them in there. Committees put them in because of a variety of different circumstances. Maybe somebody resigned, maybe somebody passed away, maybe somebody turned around and didn't run, maybe whatever. Do you think that that's what people think that's going on as far as they only get to elect 2/3 of the people and the other third is elected by, for the most part, whatever party is in power or whatever party has a vacancy?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Look, it's interesting to me that over the last 10 years, 5 years, there's been more vacancies than ever before. More resignations, more leaving, and the vacancy committees, which are usually 50 people, 100 people, they decide, right, who's going to be filling that seat. And then they get reelected if they want to stay, but they're considered an incumbent. And because the people don't know that they were there as a vacancy slot, they believe they've been there forever. And one of the challenges I think that I would always challenge just the people themselves, the voters, right, is get involved, listen, ask the right questions. Every individual that's running for office, including myself, right, we're applying for a job. That's what we're looking to do. We're applying for a job and we get paid by the taxpayer. So in my world, you're my boss, nobody else. And so if you call your congressman, you call your state representative, you call your mayor and they're not calling you back. Imagine someone not calling back their boss. How long would you keep them? You'd probably fire them.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not doing what they need to be doing.
Hell, I do that with friends. I mean, it was like I called you 3 months ago. Now you're just calling me back?
Exactly. And I think that's where we've kind of lost our way as a people. I tell them, if you were a small business owner and you were about to retire and you were wanting to replace yourself as the CEO of the company, would you hire someone that's the most popular, or would you hire the one that's got the most experience? And then when you do hire that individual, would you tell them, you know what, don't bankrupt the company. I'll see you in 4 years. That's when I'll give you your first evaluation to let you know whether you did a good job or not. Who does that?
Yeah.
Nobody does that in business, but we do that every day when we elect officials, whether it's the mayor, town council, county commissioner, state representative, it really doesn't matter. We need to start holding people accountable for their decisions and how they act when they're holding those offices. And that's really what I want to do as a governor is redirect the responsibilities that need to be addressed at those levels. One of the first things that I'm going to do, and I've been telling people this, and they're like, that's going to be a very interesting conversation, that first one. I said, I know, but we need to have it. On the 7th floor of the Denver Public Library, there's a special table. It's the table where all the heads of state for the Summit of Eight came to Colorado in 1982. Okay. What's unique about that table, Dan, is that there's no right side, there's no left side. It's round. Okay. So when we sit around that table, I'm going to remind them, we all said we're here to do what's in the best interest of the state for all 64 counties, not just the urban corridor. What are we going to do to make sure that we help the quality of life of everybody? And I could care less whether it's a good idea from a Republican or a good idea from a Democrat. If it's a good idea, we're going to run with it. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to stop it, right? We're not going to continue to fund programs that aren't effective, that aren't working. It's okay to take a step back and say, you know what? We tried it. It's not working the way we wanted it to. We're going to stop it. We're going to tweak it, or we're just going to abandon it because it's not doing what we thought it was going to do. And that's really where true governing comes in, is recognizing that, there are times we can't be wasting money just because you're hopeful that it's going to make a difference.
Well, you look at the current legislature in the state of Colorado right now. I mean, the Colorado is in a significant financial hole.
Yeah.
Did they dig that themselves? For the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Did the feds contribute to that in some capacity because of stipends or grants or mandates or whatever? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, the amount of legislation that they're considering now in the 2026 session still has a lot of money that we want. Gimme. We should do that. Take it from here. Put it to there. I can't do that as a small business owner. I've never been able to.
Right.
Either my wife controls it, or I turn around and look. It's just not feasible. We have to turn around and look at other alternatives. And I know that the legislature as a whole is not intending to turn around and dig a deeper hole. They're not handing everybody shovels and backhoe and say, just keep digging it and see how far we can go. However, when you have a divided legislature like what we have, and you've got so many colors of blue on one side and fewer colors of red on the other, not even talking on the political side of things, do you think there needs to be more of a balance of some pink and purple when you're talking to some of these legislators to get more in the middle to where there's a little bit more accountability and transparency?
Yeah, but you know what? But here's what I would like to see. Look, there are two houses in the legislature, okay? You got the House of Representatives and you got the state Senate, okay? I would like to see one house be controlled by one party and the other house be controlled by another party, because now they have to really debate to see what makes a good bill that they're going to send to the governor's office, right? Right now, when you have one party controlling both the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, there's no discussion. There's no real debate, right? I would encourage people to really look at making sure if you like the House being controlled by the Democrat Party, more power to you. But make sure that the Senate is controlled by the Republicans, because now you have real debate. Now you will have real discussion, because nothing goes to the governor for signature unless it passes both houses. And I think a lot of people forget that, right? A lot of people forget that, oh, that's how a bill becomes law.
Right.
Yeah. So let's make sure we have good laws by both sides debating the issues. That's what I would like to see. And that's what I'm going to push throughout my campaign, is to remind people you have a role to play. And let's make sure because they're supposed to represent the people. So let's make sure that these houses are divided. One controls one and the other one controls the other, so we can have good legislation come out of there.
Why do you think that the current governor has had so much criticism from one side or the other because he knows he has the support of the legislature because it's all blue,
Right.
the House and the Senate. Do you think it all rests on the governor because you're running for governor? Do you think it all rests on the governor, or is it dependent on the individual legislators and the individual chambers to turn around and try to either rein the governor in or give the governor support that is in the benefit of all the people?
Yeah. Well, it's a hybrid. Okay. I wish it was really black and white, but it's not. It's a hybrid. In the political world, it's gray, right? You got to look it through. So when we talk about the budget, okay, how did Colorado get to this point in the budget? And there was a number of things. You know what? When they get money for one-time expenditures, like grants, and they offer a program that they know is going to go on forever, and they know those grant dollars are going to dry up, where are you going to get that money from? Right? And so the other thing that they're not doing, Dan, that a lot of people don't know, is they use baseline budgeting. That's their philosophy right now in the state. Baseline. What that means is there's a base at the end of every year. They don't talk about how they spent the money last year. The only debate or discussion is how much new money we're going to put on top of this. Okay? They should go back, and this is what I'm going to do as a governor, zero-based budgeting. You start from zero, and you ask every department what they're doing, why are they doing it, is it working, so that every dollar is justified and every program is held accountable for the taxpayers' dollars. Okay? They're not doing that. They're just adding to it. I mean, this is what Congress is doing. You know, Congress is spending money we don't have. The state is trying to allocate money we don't have. So where are they going to get this money? And what I'm hearing right now is they're going, where are they going? The Taxpayer Bill of Rights, right? Fees, right? Enterprises. And I know a lot of people don't understand this, but I will tell you this. Right now, the basic thing that most people need to understand, government makes no money. It takes money. And it takes money from you and me. They reach into our pockets every year and ask for more money. And then they wonder why we struggle. Then they wonder how we are so frustrated that we can't afford groceries. We can't afford our gas bill or insurance payment or mortgage payment or our property taxes. It's because they keep reaching into our pockets and taking more and more money out. We got to stop that. You know, I believe $1 is a lot of money. It's easy to spend other people's money because it's not yours. But if you have a philosophy that that dollar belongs to the people, you should have a different attitude on how you're spending it.
It's interesting you talk about that too, because you know there's 85,000 different things that a governor would have to consider, and hopefully that governor would be able to have resources, experts in each field. Switching gears, the current administration has not necessarily chosen what we would consider to be experts. And even criticism come from other people's sides, our side,
Sure.
or my side. I'm talking from a sporting
Yeah,
side.
yeah, yeah. I get it.
What's the governor's task, the hardest thing he has to do to be able to make sure that he's bipartisan when he turns around and makes these individual appointments or these selections and stuff? And we'll get into the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission side of this. Most of our audience is going to be interested in the wildlife side, the conservation side, the habitat, the stewardship, threatened and endangered species, private property rights, and wolves or whatever. What's the governor's responsibility to turn around and do, in your mind, differently or parallel to what this current administration is doing?
Well, let me tell you, I know Governor Polis, okay? When I was the director of the United States Small Business Administration, he was serving in Congress, okay? And I had an opportunity to attend a lot of town hall meetings. He seems to believe that he is the smartest man in the room, And I have a tendency to believe that I'm not the smartest man in the room. I'm going to surround myself with good people. So the governor needs to understand that he is the voice of the people, of all 6 million residents here in Colorado. He is not the voice of one party, and that's what, now that I'm running as an independent, no one can accuse me of playing party politics, right? I can work with Democrats if I believe it's the right thing for the state. I can work with Republicans if I believe it's the right thing for the state, or I can work against them. But ultimately, the governor needs to educate the people of what's going on inside the Capitol, right? If there's a bill that's going to hurt their children in school, he shouldn't wait for that bill to pass. He should be out there into the public square encouraging people to go to the Capitol or talk to their representatives and ask them these questions. If you believe it's the right thing to do, then go there and support them. If you believe it's the wrong thing to do, then call them and ask them, why are you doing this? Right? That's accountability. So right now, the governor is not fulfilling his responsibility. He's only fulfilling one side, and that is the executive powers. But he's gone too far with his executive powers because he's appointing individuals to boards and commissions that are not experts in that area. Those are party favors. They supported him, they gave him money or whatever it may be. But if you look at the resumes, they're not qualified to be there at all.
No.
And you listen to them talk, and it doesn't take long to realize they really don't understand what they're talking about.
And that's not just on the wildlife.
No, I'm talking all
Yeah,
boards.
if you look at a lot of different things, and I'm not trying to divide Republicans and Democrats
No.
and then independents over here in this corner, but the current state of affairs have been tried significantly over the last 7.5 years.
Yep.
And they've become even more and more tumultuous over the course of the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
This last year, coming up, the last 11 months, are going to be trying, just like any lame duck individual getting out of an office,
Right.
elected official. Do you see an opportunity for preparation? If you're so lucky to be governor, which you say you are, and I would agree, but other individuals have similar ideologies and different perspectives as well. Do you see an opportunity to where voters can make a decision on the right person based upon what they say that they can legitimately, legally follow through with, or that some of these things just get lost in the sausage making process, and pretty soon, after a 4-year term, you haven't been able to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish just because of the minutia of government itself?
Well, and I'm glad you're asking that question because look, if you've never been in the belly of the beast, right? It sounds like you can do this, right? A lot of people that are business owners or have never been in politics, they believe government works like business. I'm the boss. What I do goes, right? And if I don't like what you're doing, I want to fire you. They don't realize that there are unions in government, right? There's protocols. There's bureaucrats that have been there years and years. And they know that every 4 years there's an election. So if they don't like you, they'll just outspend you, right? They'll spend there and they're like, you know what? I'll appease him for 4 years and then he's going to be gone, right? And you never know whether they're actually doing your agenda or not because you're never coming back to figure out if they are doing it or not. Okay. And so I will tell you that I believe that right now the people are going to have to look at what do we want Colorado to look like in the next 5 years? You need a governor that has visionary classes, someone that can actually walk you through how things are going to work. And I'm here to tell you, my agenda, I will achieve it, but it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to happen overnight. I got to roll back a lot of this mindset that's been embedded for the last 7 years into these organizations, right? But I can't do it alone. You know who's going to help me? The people. The people are going to help me because I'm going to be representing them. And when I run into problems, I'm going to let them know that I'm running into problems. When I'm successful, I'll let them know that we were successful, right? Because it's about all of us, not just some of us. And that's what's going to be different under my administration is that the people of the state of Colorado on all 4 corners, on all 64 counties, they're going to feel that they have a voice in the governor's office. They may not have a voice in the legislature because there's separations of power, right? But they will have a voice in the governor's office. And the way I'm going to do that is because I am going to continue to travel the state. I am going to continue to go out into those communities. And I'm not going to do what the governor typically does. Show up for a breakfast, be there for 30 minutes, and then book town. That's not being a governor. You need to stick around. You need to be there for the day or half a day and talk to bankers and talk to seniors and talk to people and get their sense of what's going on, right? I'm going to keep my hand on the pulse of the community by being out there in the community. I need to know whether my boss thinks I'm doing a good job or a bad job.
So you talk about connectivity to the community. Your involvement over the last year or more with the agriculture community, the sportsman community, I think shows an example of what you're envisioning that should happen in the healthcare community and the oil and gas community and the renewable energy community and a variety of other sectors of what Colorado voters would be interested in. When you got into the specifics on wolves, or maybe not specifics on wolves, did you envision that it was going to get you down into a rabbit hole and create such a conundrum of circumstances? Because the wolf issue, the federal side coming into the state side, coming into the threatened and endangered species side, coming into the Colorado Parks and Wildlife side, and the political side within Colorado because it was a voter initiative, Proposition 114. Did you think that it was that deep and that you needed a really long-handled shovel to be able to turn around and dig through some of the stuff?
No, I'll be very honest with you. You know, when you first asked me, hey, Greg, can you please stop this meeting and just listen? I thought, okay, you know, how bad could it be? I mean, you know, you made it sound very
Yeah.
dysfunctional.
Yeah. I explained it. I gave you a warning. It's not like you got hit in the head with a pillow.
Well, you know, and then I get there and you're absolutely correct, right? I mean, it was like, oh my God, what is going on here?
Yeah.
You know, and so because I've been in these arenas, right, I know that there's overlap, right? There's special interest groups, there's the experts, there's the stakeholders, there's the technical groups, right? There's the politics that get played. I will tell you the one thing that really shocked me, because I really hadn't really given a whole lot of thought of it, was when you see, you know, Greg, this was never really supported by the science. It was supported by voters. And then when I looked at the voter turnout and I looked at the counties, they're like, wait a minute, this was voted in by Denver and Boulder, right? And then they want the wolves to be only released on the western slope. You know, that's when everything started to kind of like, something's not right here. And that's why I call it Wolfgate. The more I looked into it, right, the more I saw, the more I realized something's not right here, you know. And when I realized that the governor purposely violated the Endangered Species Act, he knew exactly what he was doing. I will never say, because he's a smart man, he is not dumb. So he knew exactly that he was violating the Endangered Species Act by going to Canada and importing them into Colorado. What he was counting on was on his political clout. That as a governor, no one would call him out, right? And so it was happening. It wasn't until I looked at the Endangered Species Act, I sent a letter along with the Outfitters Association and the Wolf Growers Association to put
Wool growers, not wolf growers.
Yeah, that's right. Wool Growers
Freudian
Association.
slip.
Right. The Wool Growers Association, right? That all of a sudden, right, they started to pay attention, you know. And how did it work? Because I am a congressman, always, once a congressman, always a congressman. And so the federal agencies looked at the letter and they said, you know what? I think he's got a real solid point right here. And that's where the cease and desist letter came, right?
From Director Nesbitt.
From Director Nesbitt saying you will not bring in wolves from Alaska and you won't bring them in from Canada. You know, I still believe someone needs to be held accountable for violating the Endangered Species Act. We cannot let anybody just say, well, we didn't know. No, I'm still don't, you know, I kept hearing, well, we had permission. You know, they knew exactly what we were doing, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm not seeing any evidence of that. You know, I'm not seeing a memo or a letter or a directive. And regardless if they got an email, if you read the Endangered Species Act, they must have a permit. You can't do it on an email. You can't do it on someone's opinion. And so you're right. I am looking at all these issues, right? Whether it's wildlife, healthcare, whether it's transportation, whether it's water, air quality, growth, right? Impact fees, energy, all these things. I've dealt with them and I'm going to look at them with a big broad brush to understand the complexity of it. because this job, it's not a popularity job. You must understand the totality of what it is that you're asking to do.
Well, it might be popularity with some people to start with, but then you start to see the anxiety or animosity from different sectors from a variety of different levels because nobody's ever happy 100% with their boss.
Right.
And I think elected officials probably feel the brunt of so much of this on top of what other people
Well,
have to
here's the
do.
thing, Dan. The way I've always dealt with that is I go to them, those people that are not happy, right? That have a different opinion. I go to them and have a sit down and talk to them. You know, I don't know that we're going to get out of there with an agreement, but what they do know is that, you know what? He respects us enough to sit down and have a conversation.
If you're looking to explore your opportunities to hunt out west, maybe try Colorado. If you're trying to get information about bighorn sheep, elk, deer, private land, public land, maybe it's everything that you want to do as far as pack-in trips. Maybe it's just having a pack trip decided for you, and then when you get there, you just hunt out of a drop camp. Make sure you check out the Colorado Outfitters Association. Colorado Outfitters Association here in the state of Colorado has got a numerous amount of outfitters that are members, and they can supply you with whatever you're looking to try to acquire and what you want to do for the hunt of a lifetime. For more information, check out the coloradooutfitters.org and make sure that you let them know that you heard about them with Through the Gates, and let them know that you're trying to continue to save the hunt in the state of Colorado. We always talk about supporting businesses that support our efforts to be able to save the hunt in Colorado. Well, the Colorado Shed Company in Penrose, Colorado, just outside Canyon City, is one of those partners. Colorado Shed has been building sheds in the state of Colorado for the last 10 years and is actually owned by sportsmen and women. They support the efforts of what the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management has done, and they also support all the organizations that you're probably a member of. Whether you're looking for small modular type buildings, sheds for your property to store the extra hunting equipment, or maybe just to turn around and put that freezer in for all the meat that you've got, check out Colorado Sheds. They also do pole barns and can do custom manufacturing to whatever your heart desires. She sheds, man caves, it doesn't matter. Check out coloradosheds.com. Where you're at in your campaign, are you seeing things come from your outreach to the general public and through these forums and stuff that are overly redundant? Are you seeing new things surface that people are concerned about that maybe you weren't made aware of before?
No, look, I've always kept my hand on the pulse of what's been happening in the state, right? In all 64 counties, in the urban corridor, the Eastern Plains, the Western Slope, we all struggle with the same thing, right? Cost of living, affordability, right? Our kids' education, making sure that our jobs are going to be there for us, right? What is government doing? You know, can we at least get some relief from what's going on? And so everybody gets frustrated with what's happening in government. They don't like the politics anymore. They don't like the rhetoric, right? If you look at Colorado, Colorado is very unique, and I think the nation's going to follow it because Colorado seems to always be one of the lead states in what happens. Here in Colorado right now, of all the active voters, these are the people that are actually voting to make decisions. 50% of them are unaffiliated or independent voters. 25% are Democrat, and 23% are Republican. So you have to ask yourself, why so many unaffiliated voters, right? And when you talk to them, they say, I'm done. I don't want to be known as a Democrat because they're not doing good things. I don't want to be known as a Republican because they're not doing good things either.
There's a component there too that you're talking registered voters. There's a hell of a lot of people out there that aren't registered voters, and the ones that are registered voters that don't vote are probably part of an issue just as bad as the other people that are registered.
Right. Yeah. But here's the thing. They've never heard a voice that talks to them. They've heard voices that talks to silos, to groups, right? There's two worldviews right now, and they want to know, where are we taking us? Now they have a voice that says, look, I understand both worldviews. I understand when it's right to use one and when it's right to use the other. I'll give you a perfect example. People trust the Republican Party when it comes to law enforcement and immigration. Why? Because they're steady on the rule of law. But when it comes to the social issues, when it comes to schools, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the homeless, when it comes to making sure that, young families can live the American dream, they like the Democrat way of looking at it because they're more compassionate. They're more connected with the emotional needs of a community. I come from both sides. I'm not one or the other. I grew up as a Democrat. I understand the struggles, of families. I still watch my nickels and my dimes. I'm not all that in a bag of chips, but I also understand that it's important for business and industry to be successful. Why? Because they create jobs, they create opportunity for the other segment of society. But we must also take care of each other. So, healthcare, of course, we want to be able to provide healthcare, but we can't pay for everything, right? We want to make sure that our streets are safe, but we can't let just everybody go. We got to send a message, right? Same thing with our education. You know what? Yeah, we want our children to be well-rounded, but first they need to know how to read, how to write, and how to do math, right? There's plenty of time in life to be well-rounded, right? The first 12 years of their life, the first 18 years of their life, we got to build a solid foundation as to how they can live their American dream. And I don't support that it's okay to have them walk out of school because there's some protest. No. You know what? I think it's the teachers and the superintendents that say, you know what? Something's happening outside of this building. We're going to talk about it, but you're not going to go out there. You need to stay in this classroom. You need to have this conversation here, right? You don't need to be out there. There'll be plenty of time, for you to be out there. If they wanted you to be in those rallies, they would have made them at 6 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
Why, right? Why are they making them during the day?
Yeah. It's like a government meeting. They gripe about why are all the meetings at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? It's because that's business.
Yeah.
It's government business. Try to go to the bank at 11 o'clock at night and try to get done what you want.
Exactly.
Unless you're a burglar.
Right.
The way that the last 7.5 years, or roughly, that Colorado has kind of transformed into a different ideology on a variety of levels. And when Governor Hickenlooper was there, or Governor Ritter was there, there were some similarities at different levels. But what's happened in the last 7 years has been a complete transformation over what the other two previous governors did.
Yep.
If you had the chance today, you walk into the office, you've got your ducks in a row, what would be the first thing that you could do to establish something that would be an ability for the general public to continue to communicate to your administration that you knew that information was going to go into some sort of a think tank or some sort of a process, as opposed to being flushed down the toilet like what it seems on many, many occasions over the last 7.5 years?
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of different angles, right? I'm a firm believer when there's a will, there's a way. And so I would say right now what I'm thinking about is doing an ombudsman. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not. An ombudsman is a individual like you, right? That I would say, go out there. Your agency or your group, everybody comes to you unfiltered. Okay. You don't need to worry about politics. You don't need to worry about anything. And then you have a direct contact with me. Okay. And if you need me to have these hearings so I can hear what they're saying, right, that I will be there, because we must hear the voices. We can't filter them. Too many times in elected offices, people believe that they're supposed to be the gatekeeper, right? Oh, you're too busy. You don't want to read this letter. Oh, you know what? We didn't think it was important. No. Let me decide what's important, okay? Because they voted me in, not you. Let me decide, right? I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in Congress, and I do this all the time when I'm in positions of authority, my staff said, we're getting emails and phone calls. Some are positive and some are negative. And we know what we need to say on positive ones. What do you want us to say on the negative ones? I said, well, what do you mean? What do you want me to say? They're like, well, how do you want us to handle it? I said, well, how did you handle it before? They said, well, we kind of ignored them. I said, wait a minute. So if you got negative comments, you really didn't address them. You kind of ignored them because you really didn't want to address it. And I said, yeah. I said, okay, that's not happening. I said, what I want is every week, I don't know how many negative you're getting, but I want you to bring me the 5 every week. And I will call them. And you'll be in the room to listen to my conversation. You're actually going to call people that are mad at you. Well, yeah, they're my boss. Of course I'm calling them. And so I would call people, right? And say, hey, Dan, this is Congressman Greg Lopez. He said, no, it's not. I said, no, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't think you would call me. And they would apologize, right? They'd say, I'm so sorry. I left so many bad words on the voicemail, or my letter was not polite. And I would say, you know what, that's fine. You know what, I can see you're passionate. Let's have a conversation. What is it that you don't like? What is it that you feel? And I will tell you, 50, 60% of the time, they thought I'd done something that I didn't do.
Right.
Because they were watching the media or they were listening to the newscast, right? And then when I would explain them, well, this is what I can do for you, or this is what I am looking to do, they're like, okay. And I said, we'll make sure that, we'll follow up with you. Doesn't mean that we're going to follow up with you every week, but know that we'll keep you in the loop. That's all they wanted. They wanted to be heard, they wanted to be respected, and they wanted to know that they mattered.
I can tell that you start to get riled up about stuff because things that that should be you able to communicate. So watch your hands on the table, turn around and create so much adverse effect the thing. But it's interesting to see the enthusiasm that you got, because I think the channel of communication with legislators and with elected officials sometimes is confined to a public meeting, sometimes confined to the minions that are down below those individuals. Like what you said, some of that information never surfaces and reaches the top.
Right.
Is there some strategy in the governor's position that, without making government bigger, without creating some sort of a bigger strategy or a bigger net or a firewall, that would be beneficial, that you think could be additive to these conversations? I mean, you're talking about the individuals out there to reach different levels, but when somebody has a specific concern today, the way it sits, what's the best course of action that's laid out that somebody should be able to say, I need to contact such and such? You can reach out to your legislators, you can reach out to your senators and your representatives, you can reach out to your county elected officials. But sometimes there's even a barrier there that doesn't reach the appropriate channels in an appropriate time. Mm-hmm. Is government gotten so big that the little guy, the voter, the layman, just kind of throws their hands up because they don't get a chance to interact? They don't get a chance. We have a ton of different options out there, but it's almost like it's almost a barrier more than it is a conduit or a mechanism of communication.
Right. Now, look, I don't know that I would say government has gotten too big. I think what's happened is the bureaucrats have gotten too big in their own heads about who they should talk to and who they should not talk to. Okay. When I was at SBA, and I'm going to do this as governor, I'm going to roll it back and you watch the pushback that I'm going to get from the bureaucrats and the employees. Okay. When I was at SBA, my team wanted a automatic answering voice and a phone tree. And I'd say, no, we will man the phones, because people are calling because they need help. They're not calling to leave a message. They're calling because they need help.
Yeah.
And we're here to help them. So I will remove all these little voices that you have an opportunity to leave a voicemail. We will once again be able to physically help people. They will either be able to come into the office and see someone sitting in the reception, or if they call, some live person is going to answer the call. And the way I validate this is when I'm out there in the public, when my lieutenant governor is out there in the public, and my staff is out there in the public, because I'm going to send them out there, right? If I'm hearing from people, I call the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I haven't had a return phone call in 3 days. Okay, who'd you talk to? Give me a name. We've got to hold people accountable, right? And I will call the director and say, did you know I was just at some place and someone told me we're not responding? Can you tell me why? Why are we not responding to this person? Bureaucrats have forgotten that the government is there to help people, not stall them, that they go away, not create these barriers that I am too busy to talk to you. You're not too busy. You're getting paid by them. You need to respond to them, right? And so, again, creating an environment where people understand we're there to respond to our bosses. And everybody's our boss. Doesn't matter who it is, the plumber, the farmer, the rancher, the wife, the mom. If they're calling, it's our boss calling.
And that brings up a good point, because there's things that I've heard legislators say, and I've been playing at this level for quite a while, unintentionally. It's not anything I really wanted to sign up for. It's like I bought a hangman's noose, I was 35 years old. But people say that my vote doesn't matter. Okay, what would you say to that? But what would you also say? I don't vote because it doesn't matter. So the ones that do vote, thinking that's obligated, they're obligated to do so, but that doesn't matter. But the other one just doesn't participate. How does that dynamic play into the bureaucratic side of things and actually accomplishing something for the people?
So think about what they're actually saying. They're using the words, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. But actually what they're saying is, no one listens to me. No one cares about what my life is like. No one cares about what I'm struggling with. Because if they felt someone cared, they would vote. But because they're not feeling like anybody is responding to them, right? They're like, I'm done. I mean, I might as well just be out here, try to figure it out all by myself, because no one really cares. And that's what I'm saying about changing the mindset, right? And when I hear people say, oh, Greg, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. My response is, okay, what would it look like for you to believe your vote does matter? What would it look like? They said, well, you know what? Someone answer the phone once in a while, that would be good. Okay, what else? Well, my mayor would call me back once in a while. Okay. Because they know deep down, they may not get everything they want. But if there's an issue, they want someone to talk about it, right? Whether it's the governor or the director or whatever, they want people to know, you know what? I made a phone call. And guess what? 2 days later, they're talking about it in the news. Or I get a phone call from somebody to say, thank you for calling us. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're working on. Perhaps you can do this. Perhaps you can do that. When they realize that they're part of a system, then they start voting again. Then they start feeling like, you know what? My voice does matter. It may not matter on every issue that I care about, but I'm not being ignored. And so I always try to tell them, tell me, what would it look like for you to believe your vote actually matters?
I'm going to switch gears again. But we could say talk about this all day.
Sure.
Because I think there's enough subject matter to talk about it all day. But I don't want to keep you all day, and we both have issues that we're dealing with. I'm going to ask you a series of questions.
Sure.
Top 3 things that you think need to be addressed by the next governor of the state of Colorado. In your case, you, but top 3 things that need to be addressed that are just, and I'm going to ask that same shit on a sportsman side, but the top 3 things that need to be addressed for the state of Colorado.
Well, I want to answer it in 2 different ways.
Of course, you're a politician. What?
Like, there are top things that need to be done to help the quality of life of people, the struggles that they're dealing with. And there are things that need to be done to improve the efficiency of government, right? And so the easy thing as the governor is to first deal with the internal operations, right? Streamline processes, find out what's going on, and making sure that people understand the role that we are supposed to play in respect to the citizenry. Cleaning the boards and commissions. I'm going to tell you, I look at these resumes, we got to clean those boards and commissions because those guys are not there for the right reason, right? Got to reevaluate who is overseeing what department and what are they doing? What's their evaluations? How high have they been doing? And they've been effective? Are they just spending money? Where are we spending all this money? There's a lot of stuff. In order to make it better, you got to clean your own house, right? At least tighten it up a little bit,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And then when it comes to the people, right, is how about we don't pass 500 laws every single year? How about we pass 200, right? 200 is plenty. You know?
200 good ones are better than 500 bad ones or mediocre ones.
Exactly, right? And so when people start realizing that we're going to be looking at this, fees, I'm going to reevaluate these fees. Why are we charging these fees? You know, and I've been in government where they said, well, we've always done it this way. That doesn't mean it's working.
Well, I don't think they did it this way since like the beginning of the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
But the assumption is that government has become more and more corrupt into what you're talking about, dividing these aspects into the mechanism or the facilitation of the government entity and then working with the people. And I didn't mean to cut.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, so for 7 years, we've been under a single party rule for 7 years. We know what it feels like to live under a single party rule. And I will tell you, nobody's quality of life is better today than it was 8 years ago.
No.
It's gotten worse. Okay.
Well, I'm in small business, so I can account for that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you though, but if you think about this, Governor Polis told us he was going to do that. The very first time he addressed the state of the state, he said, I'm going to fundamentally change Colorado. Now, we thought he was going to do it for the betterment of all of us. No, in his mind, he changed it. But to his worldview, not to our worldview, right? And this is where it's a very fine line when elected officials, you either start listening to those lobbyists, to those high elite people, or you stay grounded to listen to the people, all of them, not just those that can write big checks, right? Or you're not making decisions for another job. Look, we all know where Governor Polis wants to be. He wants to be president of the United States. You know, okay, you know what? That's great. That's great that he's got a dream and a vision, but he shouldn't be sacrificing the people of Colorado to get there. You know, and you look back and you ask yourself, all this environmental stuff, my electric bill's not going down. They told us it was going to go down. It's cheaper, right? Your bills will come down. No, right? All this growth, right? Oh, it's great for us. What about our water? What about our transportation corridors, right? So it's easy, and this is what most people do right now, Dan, in the campaign, if you look at it. There's a philosophy that political pundits try to convince candidates to do. Tell them what they want to hear. Just tell them what they want to hear. Don't worry about whether you can do it or not. Just tell them what they want to hear so they'll vote for you, right? And so when you do that and people believe it, and then like you said, 2 years later, 3 years later, nothing's changed, what happens? They lose faith in the system. They lose faith in government.
And that's where you're saying that maybe they just don't think anybody's listening to it because they don't see it. They don't see it actually follow through with the promises. Yeah. And we've heard other individuals talk about campaigns of broken promises over the course of the last 7 years.
Yeah. You know, and my goal, my promise is, again, this is my governing philosophy. People over politics, do no harm and do what works, right? To the best of my ability. Because to your point, there's so many issues and there's so many different lifestyles. But ultimately, I'm here to help people achieve their dream. They don't need to be rich. They just need to be happy, right? I mean, I live in rural Colorado. You know, it'd be like, why do you live out there? It's like, because I like the space. And I'm okay with roads that don't get plowed. I'm okay with the fact that, you know, they may not come and pick up my trash. Hey, because you know what? I don't have to deal in that concrete jungle. I don't have to be there, right? I can go if I want, but I can also leave. And this is really what a governor needs to do is create a vision. And so I'm here to tell you, people need to be more involved. And now that I'm running as an independent, Dan, I picked the hardest path to become the governor. I don't have a political machine behind me. I don't have political dollars behind me, right? The only thing I have is my voice, my resume, my experience, my wisdom that shows that I can govern with a steady hand. And that I will always, always remember where I come from. You know, there's no shame in me telling people my dad and mom grew up working in the fields. And then my dad had a 6th-grade education, never learned to read and write. There's no shame in me saying that because look at me now. Their son has the ability to run for governor. And I was in Congress. What other country offers that?
And you're on the Through the Gates podcast.
And I'm on your podcast.
You know?
Yeah. So this is what people are thirsting for. The people across our nation, the people of Colorado are thirsting for a voice that they can actually connect with, that they truly feel, you know what, this guy understands us. And they understand the challenges of trying to get things done. They see it in D.C., right? They see President Trump always having a battle. They see Congress battling. You know, they shut down the government. They open the government. They shut it down again. It's like, really? Why can't we just work together?
Exactly. Yeah. Talking about the wildlife side, which is the majority of our community
Right.
for listening to this podcast and what we engage in. I'm gonna give you some talking points and let you expand on some of them. But wolves,
Uh-huh.
the people voted on it.
Mhm.
Maybe didn't make the right decision in some of our minds, but the fact of the matter is the state has to deal with that. You as governor, moving forward, not looking at what has maybe transpired in the last 6 years since Proposition 114, where do we need to go to adhere to the will of the people, be considerate of the wildlife strategies and management of Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Department of Natural Resources, while at the same time being considerate to be stewards of the North American model of wildlife conservation for wolves and the other 960 species of wildlife? Long question, but
No.
where do we need to, how do we need to move forward to do what's right for all of that?
Okay. So here's a different approach. Okay. Yes, I will agree. There was a vote of the people, and the majority of the people voted to bring them in. But it was less than 1%. The difference was less than 1%.
A little over one, right? But in any event, it's close.
Okay. Now we know what it feels like to have wolves in the state. I would push, let's ask the people again. Let's not just believe that people don't change their minds. And this is what happens with the legislation. They pass a law and they think, well, it's got to be on the books forever. No, it doesn't. You can repeal it. You can ask the people again. I would much rather ask the people of Colorado again 5 years later. You guys voted for wolves. Here's everything that we've dealt with. Here's what it did to the CPW budget. Here's what it did to some of the ranching and farming communities. Do you still want to do this? Yes or no? But in the meantime, we must also remember that the endangered species is not the responsibility of the state of Colorado. That belongs to the federal government. And they know it, and everybody needs to understand it. That 10J rule basically just gives the guidelines on how the wolf will be managed in Colorado. And then the memorandum of agreement that's signed with CPW makes them the designated agent. They still work for the federal agency. And that's why they're being questioned right now. Have you done your job correctly? Because if you haven't been doing your job correctly, we're going to pull that agreement.
But that being said, I mean, just talking about wolves specifically, with you as governor, what needs to change for CPW to be able to do their job as opposed to maybe the way it's been adhered to from the different ideologies over the course of the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years?
Well, it's pretty simple, Dan. Follow the plan. Follow the plan that you adopted with the stakeholders and the technical proof.
With governor intervention?
No. See, that's where government goes astray. Okay? It's follow the plan. Okay? If you're not following the plan, tell me why you're not following it. I'm not going to tell them how to follow it or how to stretch it to achieve a personal agenda. That's what's happening today, right? They stretch it. Oh, don't do that. Maybe you can figure out a different way. No. If you're going to bring technical experts and stakeholders to sit together in a room or spend almost 2 years thinking about this, right, and putting a plan together, is that just smoke and mirrors? Or do you really appreciate the wisdom and the knowledge of those individuals? But simple things, right? Simple things. It says you will not capture a pack that's known for depredation and re-release it in another part of the state. I don't care that you were hoping that it would mate in a different part of the state. There's no exceptions in here.
Right.
You know, it said you're not supposed to do it. But if you ask them, well, we need them to mate. Well, have them mate in captivity, not up here. But again, right, it's they get blindsided by their goal. They get blindsided by their agenda and not do correctly things that are correct. You know, look, like I said, I'm not going to be the smartest man in the room. That's okay by me. But I will watch decisions and see how they're impacted. Is it good or bad? Let's talk about it, right? I'm not just going to say, hey, do it. I don't care who you're running over. I really don't care that you're impacting the entire cattle industry or that you're hurting small towns up in the mountains because of all this stuff. No, it's about doing it correctly. So I will tell you that as a governor, I will do oversight to make sure people are doing their job, but I will not interfere with my personal agenda.
About current firearm issues in the state of Colorado with the legislature doing what they're doing, would you as governor, based upon what's happened over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 years, would you be supportive of efforts like that, or would you stop those and not sign those particular pieces of legislation?
You know what? I will tell you this. I will never sign a legislation that I don't believe in because it'll become law by itself. But here's the reason I won't. I don't want generations from now under the Lopez clan that someone says, well, your great grandfather believed in this. And they're like, how do you know? Because he signed the bill. No, I'm not signing anything I don't believe in. Here's the thing. I believe in the Constitution. And if you read the Constitution, everything that's happening here in Colorado when it comes to the Second Amendment, in my opinion, is in violation of the Second Amendment. Because I don't think these legislatures care or understand that the Bill of Rights, that wasn't designed for people to understand. It was designed for governments to understand. This is a directive to the government, not to the people. And it's telling government, you will not infringe on the right. And who's the government? The legislatures, the 100 of them. And they're violating, as a group, the Constitution. And I will let everybody know that they're violating it, right? Because what they're trying to address is something that is in human character, right? The gun, you and I know this, the gun doesn't kill anybody. It's the person that's using it. They don't want to accept that. They don't want to believe that it's the person pulling the trigger. They want to say, well, if he didn't have the gun, it wouldn't happen. You know, and sometimes I say, okay, so if we want to stop obesity, do we get rid of forks and knives and spoons? Because that's what they're using. You know, where do we stop? And so I will always defend the Constitution. I'm a strong advocate for the Second Amendment, you know, and I will look to do what I can to roll back all of this stuff. But I won't do it without the support of the people. I won't do it unless the people understand what it is that we're trying to do. And I'm here to tell you, 80% of the people here in Colorado believe in the Constitution.
Still, even on, I mean, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're up, or if they're in the middle of the aisle, they still believe in the concept and the context of the Constitution.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. How about when you heard these conversations on Colorado Parks and Wildlife, you've heard discussion about resident, non-resident license allocations. The residents get too much of this, but then you've looked into some of the background on how much money the non-residents draw in because they're paying 12 or 13 times the amount of what a resident is. Do you see some value in having that conversation to educate more people? Or is there something in the back of your head that you can say, maybe we ought to consider this over that, considering the fact that the way Colorado Parks and Wildlife manages their wildlife resources is off of money, and 58% of all that money is generated from non-resident elk hunters?
Yeah. Look, again, it all comes down to education, right? What is different from what CPW is doing in the universities, right? You got in-state tuition. You got out-of-state tuition, right? Why are they do, and why is it wrong for CPW to do the same thing, right? At the same time, right, like you said, CPW predominantly is through fees. So 58% of the revenue is coming from out of state so that we can beautify and protect our environment. What's wrong with that?
Exactly.
Right? So let's put it all on the table. Let's all make sure that we fully understand what is happening. And then if there's something we need to do to fine tune it, to tweak it, I don't know that there needs to be an overhaul, but if there does need to be a major overhaul, then let's do a major overhaul. But let's talk about it, right? And again, when we do this, let's not talk about what's it going to look like 2 years from now. What's it going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? We need people with visionary glasses. Look at the numbers. Numbers don't lie, right? And if all of a sudden we're not allowing out-of-state hunters to come in, what happens to the economy? What happens to that little mom and pop grocery store, in that little mountain town? What happens to all the other tax revenue that we're losing? Because it's more than just the license that they're using to hunt. It's the economic impact that they're bringing in here. And every community would tell you, and every state would tell you, if you can bring people in and have them leave their money and then go back to their own states, that's great for us because now we have more money to build our roads, to fix our roads, because other people are helping us, right? You start chopping that golden goose down, then you're putting more burden on people. These are the discussions that people need to understand, that there's a whole environment out there that every industry is impacting, and very few people want to talk about the other issues.
I think that there's a lot of times when the general public just takes it for granted that everything in government is a done deal. It's a cooked chicken.
Right.
What would you say that would be a goal of yours to try to direct the Department of Natural Resources or Colorado Parks and Wildlife to enhance or replenish the relationships that have been kind of maybe divided over the course of the last 6 years because of the wolf introduction to the agriculture industry? Doesn't matter. I mean, the East Slope guys aren't going to have to worry about wolves for a while. The middle of the state are having wolves. The Western Slope is having wolves. But what would you say to the Department of Natural Resources and Colorado Parks and Wildlife to say, when I get people in place that need to be in place, this is what I want you to do to start to fix some of those severed relationships? Because that's a serious issue, because a significant amount of Colorado's wildlife resources live and prosper on private land.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those relationships have become tumultuous at the best.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to turn around and try to fix that as soon as you possibly could, to let the ag industry and let sportsmen and women and let the general public know that you're trying to fix part of the problem of maybe what was created unintentionally or inadvertently out of the wolf introduction?
Dan, when you run into a situation that's happened with CPW and trust has been minimized to such an extent, you can't delegate that to anybody. The governor has to step in, and the governor has to spend times, hours, and meetings, and making sure that all those individuals that were offended, all those individuals and groups and organizations that felt that they were lied to or they were misled, right, that they have an opportunity to vent and share. And then when you feel that things are going well, then you can delegate a little bit. But creating an advisory group or a oversight committee that is watching, because what you don't want is for people to say, hey, first year everything's going to be okay, And then 6 months after that, everything goes back to what it shouldn't be. You got to watch it. You got to nurture it. You got to grow it. It's like any relationship with family. When you lose the trust factor because you've done something or you didn't do something that you said you were going to do, there's doubt now. How do you earn that back? Well, a little bit at a time. And you're never going to get it 100% of it back unless that generation passes on.
Right.
Right? And that's what these guys don't understand. Prior to this whole thing with the wolf and everything else, there was a solid relationship between those groups that they would help each other left and right. They were like a family. And then someone comes in and purposely starts separating that family because they have an agenda. And they say, don't worry about what that family member thinks. Do what we need to do. And when people get caught because they want to maintain their jobs, they got to provide for their families, they really struggle with, what do I do here? And I would tell you, that's probably why there's so many retirements happening at CPW today. Because they have this moral conflict inside of them. And they're like, I don't know that I can do this.
A lot of these people are members of the community themselves, and the trials and tribulations that have been put upon them because of either the actions of the general public or the what I call manipulation from the governor's office or the administration has created those significant issues. And I'm not saying everybody has always agreed with Colorado Parks and Wildlife or the Department of Natural Resources. But look, I'm 62 years old. I've been playing this game in some capacity since I started hunting when I was 8 years old on small game and 10 years old on big game. I could tell you that the differences when I was 20 to when I was 40 to when I'm 60, government has started to take the lead on that tumultuous animosity between individuals on the landscape. And the agriculture community, the whether they're producers of livestock or farming, they feel overall, not all of them, but they feel overall that there's a significant attempt to shut them down from a variety of different levels.
You can see it.
And CPW, because of who they are, what they manage, and what lands that they turn around and interact with, because of the wildlife and natural and habitat resources, are feeling the brunt of that. And I feel that if you're governor, whoever's governor,
right.
when you're governor, I apologize. My apologies. That one of the first things that needs to be done is not so much a cleansing, but an auditing of different agencies to make sure, how do we accomplish what we need to? And I want to say this publicly. 99% of the people that are listening to this or any other form of media outlet, they can't pay a car off in 5.
Right.
But they want a governor to fix things in 4.
Mm-hmm.
They want a president to fix things in 4.
Right.
Well, no matter what party you're from, it takes more than a year and a half or 2 years to get your feet underneath your ass to turn around and make the decisions that are necessary, because government works at a snail's pace, but especially when you have 6 million people, or in the federal side, you got 325 million people.
Right.
It's not going to be fixed overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you have a plan of action to be able to turn around and try to address some of it incrementally, knowing full well that you've got thousands of appointments to make.
Yep.
You've got a ton of different agencies. You've got 6 million opinions from probably somewhere around 3.5 million voters.
Yep.
And I think that the challenge is there before you. And while our community is probably more interested in just what they're interested in, all the other stuff affects them just like it affects all the other individuals in the state.
Right. And I would tell you, look, you're absolutely correct. The amount of issues is tremendous. And that's why you do not want someone to go in there and do all on-the-job training for 4 years. Okay? You bring in someone that has no clue as to how government actually works, right? Think about it. You have legislatures that are running right now, right? You have attorney generals that are running right now. They've never run a community. They've never understood wetlands or soils or traffic, crime. How does that impact the entire community? I'm the only candidate that truly has public administration executive experience. Yes. Will I have a little learning curve? Yes. You know why? Because I don't know the players that are sitting in those chairs. I haven't built that relationship yet. Okay. But it will take me short amount of time to make sure that they understand that I know what I'm talking about. They can't pull the wool over my eyes because I've been in the trenches. Okay. And I will have people like you, because I can tell you, there will be a certain number of people that when they call and they want to have a meeting with me, there will be no delay. That'll be a 24-hour, 48-hour meeting. It's going to happen. Why? Because I need people to tell me the truth. Not what I want to hear, not what they think the people want to hear, the truth. And I've always been able to do that with my subordinates and my employees. I've had people that are comfortable walking in my office and actually saying, what in the world are you doing? Do you know that your decision is impacting this over here? And oftentimes, like, you know what? Was not aware of that. Yeah. Now, how are you going to fix it? Okay, let's see. What do we need to do to fix it? Most people, most elected officials will never admit that they did a misstep because they don't want to make a misstep.
Well, and I think a lot of times, just looking at it from a public standpoint, is they screw up, they just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
They don't go back.
No, they don't go back to fix it.
Unless they're held accountable, unless somebody calls some sort of a foul, mulligan or something on them.
Right.
The majority of the individuals I worked with in the past, all good people, majority of good people.
Look,
not all.
Everybody's got good intentions.
Yeah.
Right? You got to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. but when you mess up, you have to be able to fess up to it.
You have to own up to it.
Yeah. And I think especially when you're trying to get in, and whether you're trying to correct something or you're trying to be continually additive to something, like what I'm assuming that you and other individuals would look at, elected officials, appointed officials. I'm not saying that everybody has to figure out how to way to right the ship.
Right.
But they need at least figure out a way to keep it upright. And I think that those are things that it would be interesting to see where some of this stuff plays out over the course of the next 8 months. Yeah. But your primary is when? What do you have?
I don't have a primary.
What do you have to deal with to be able to turn around and move through these next steps?
Okay, so as I'm running as an independent candidate, okay, I don't have a primary election. Now, the way I'm going to get onto the ballot in November, because that's where you'll see my name in the general election, I have to gather 8,000 signatures. Okay. However, I cannot start gathering signatures until May 14th, and I go to July 9th. Okay. They give me 57 days to get
8,000 signatures.
Right. I have to get 1,000 signatures from every congressional district. Okay. The good thing about it is anybody can sign my petition. You don't need to be a Republican. You don't need to be a Democrat. You don't need to be unaffiliated. If you are a registered voter, you can help me get my name onto the ballot. Signing this petition is not that you're authorizing or making a pledge that you're going to vote for me. All it means is that I would like to see his name on the ballot. And then the debates will start from July all the way to October.
And if you're so lucky to be able to turn around and do that process, you'll be included in the debates.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
Because look, I'm the second highest elected official running for governor. The only other person that outranks me is Senator Michael Bennet. But I'm Congressman Greg Lopez. And I have the resume. I have the experience. And so, yes, everybody's already saying you will be on that stage. Because we've never had an independent candidate with your resume and your experience trying to seek the governor's seat. No. So it is going to be a very interesting election. But I will tell you, as I go out there and talk to people, people are starting to get excited about there's going to be a third choice. Because right now, remember, 50% are unaffiliated, right? And they feel like sometimes they have to vote for the lesser of the evils. Now, they're like, now we have one that understands what we're trying to achieve and has solved problems. I'm a problem solver, not a problem observer. My goal is to make Colorado better. I'm not looking to be the next president of the United States. I'm not looking to be the next senator for Colorado. I'm looking to fix Colorado for everyone, all of us, not just some of us. And so that's really my message. I think I can tell you that the urban corridor, because that's where the battle is. Everybody needs to understand you can win rural Colorado, right? The Democrat Party focuses on right now 23 counties is what they focus in on. They throw away the other 42. They don't even bother going out there. Why? The votes don't add up. So they spend Denver, Boulder, Jefferson, Adams, all up and down the corridor.
Well, if you just look at what we did on Proposition 127, we concentrated on the Front Range because the bulk of the voters. Yeah. But we also swayed a significant amount of people that voted for wolves to turn around and come back to the middle and vote for science on wildlife management for the ballot initiative on mountain lions and bobcats. That's a significant turn because that middle corridor, 25 miles east or west of the I-25 corridor, was significant enough to where you could actually make a dent because you gave the facts, you gave the data, you gave the statistics, and it wasn't a bunch of hyperbole that they were seeing. I believe that they saw in the wolf issue, which is obvious by a 10-point victory that we had versus what I consider a 1.8 or 1.7% loss on the wolf side.
And I think what you just said, Dan, you just validated what I said earlier. Mm-hmm. If we were to take this wolf issue back to the people, they would vote it down. Because you just showed through your initiative, you were able to shift the votes.
Yes.
Once they understood what was happening, they're like, And so I'm a firm believer. We asked the people of Colorado again, do you want the wolf here? The answer is going to be no, we don't.
What do people need to do to get in touch with Greg Lopez or his campaign?
You know what? You can go to my website, greglopez.co, not M, right? Not com, just CO, just like the state. It'll take you right to my website. If other groups want me to come out and talk, want me to meet with them, it doesn't have to be a big group. 10 people, 12 people, 7 people. It really doesn't matter to me because I'm here for the people, right? And so go to my website or, I did it on the air. I'll do it on your podcast. If people want to call me directly, this is my cell number, 303-596-3364. Call me because I'm looking to be someone that works for you, not the other way around.
Greg Lopez, it's been a pleasure to be able to have this conversation. And if necessary, I'd like to invite you back as we get through into the deep weeds of this. I mean, you might have to bring chest waders by the time that August or September comes around. You got any final closing statements that you'd like to make?
Yeah. Look, I want everybody to understand. I'm not running to divide Colorado. I'm running to unite it. Colorado right now is struggling with its political parties. And so it's time for us to look at something different. I believe that together we can build a Colorado that works for families, that works for workers and children. A Colorado that we can all be proud of and that we can have hope in. That's what I want to bring to this state.
Good deal. Look forward to future conversations and seeing how this all plays out. So, interesting episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt. And I would encourage everybody to make sure that they look into the background of Mr. Lopez and kind of decide for yourself how you want to ask questions or what you want to engage in. For more information, go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com on the issues that we're having to deal with right now. But also think about what's coming up in the primaries. Think about what's coming up in the general election. Think about people that are interested in your values and your efforts and what is important to you as a Colorado resident. Through the Gates to Save the Hunt.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.